My name's Zielinksa and I am doing the BA course Curation, Communication and Criticism at Central St Martin's. Our degree show is based on a child genius and what that means within the arts today. It's called Don't Take Me Too Lightly, and we co-curated it with an 11-year-old called Claudia Elfasani-Howard. Whilst I have you all sat down at these ancient school desks, be careful of the chewing gum and please take no offence at the obscene scribbles. I invited you here to discuss this. An education in the arts. What is it and why are we here? Where are we going with it?
I went to art school because I believed that it would kind of give me more of a broader understanding to what it is that I do basically. So I believe just to kind of broaden my skills and to gain a better idea and understanding of what it means to be a creative, what it means to be a creative, should I say.
I just feel like I'm soul searching all the time and like it's about my image and who I am and how I project that into my work rather than what knowledge I've got from a book and how I can put it into an essay or an exam and how I can achieve in that way. It feels sort of wider than that.
Can we even generalise about what an art school education is? Is it possible to even say?
I guess if you ask this question, you put someone in a booth, and in the Central St Martin's you get 4,500 separate answers. My question would be, is the collection of 4,500 reasons enough to justify an art school, or is there something beyond that as a collective?
What we initially wanted to do with this show was to, I shouldn't say take the piss out of ourselves in art school, but that was kind of it. And spinning on from that, this discussion, I think, is the end point where we actually really want to question what the point of ourselves are. I think the reason we brought Claudia in is because we're questioning our own education. So I think for me, at least, the discussion very much is about, like, is it worth it? And will you achieve, with all this money you put into it and all the money that surrounds the business, does it actually achieve anything? That's something that we have to have in society.
You know, we're in an economic recession. People are looking at what it means to fund art, and should it have a purpose outside of itself? Or is it enough to say art is okay for its own sake?
In a way, it's so important as part of our society. I mean, I've spoken to some people who think that art is peripheral to what goes on in our culture, and I think, personally, my opinion is that it's actually central to what happens.
It is marginal, I'm sorry. Art is absolutely marginal. There's a self-selected group of people that elect to be interested and also take part with the production of art and art objects. It is not part of anybody's mainstream.
I sense the room's getting a bit lively now, so yeah.
Tonight we want to talk about why are we here? What does it mean to be a curator? If we're curating with an 11-year-old, does that jeopardise what we've done for the last 3 years? Does arts education still have this purpose of teaching people to be a certain person or a certain artist? Or can it be done outside of an institution like Central St Martin's?
Elitism for me is about being as best as you possibly can within a particular field. So in that respect, that's how I would define elitism. If one uses the expertise that one has to communicate the thing that you've become expert about, there's a good use for that expertise. That is a positive use for society in general of that expertise.
With this idea of the elite versus the general public receiving the knowledge from the elite, you're making it sound like not everyone deserves it, basically.
I have no opinion about who deserves anything. I'd be interested to see what would happen if St Martin's decided to declare some sort of UDI, Unilateral Declaration of Independence, and opened its doors and its resources to the immediate locality. What would occur?
If the institution opened its doors, like he says,
I think
you would
fantastic, yeah.
Okay. But wouldn't that devalue it? Because his point is they've invested all this time and energy in making this an elite institution. And if you let anyone in, then it's no longer elite. And then what happens?
But it's an education, so those people would get the formal education that people get here in the first place. So they develop skills along the way. So at the end of the day, the results would hopefully be the same.
What do you mean by open its doors?
I mean,
Are there people to teach anything? Like, are there tutors here? Are there someone to show workshop?
I didn't actually know this was an elitist institution. I thought, I'm getting that kind of vibe there. I think actually it's really important to open your doors to our young people in and around this local area.
Sure. But you have to look at like how education is suddenly changing. We're having all these free schools, all this kind of like, this idea of choice. And head teachers are going to have this option of selecting what they can teach at certain levels. I mean, we're just going to see less and less people even introduced at a younger and younger age. I mean, it's, because it's going to become more elitist here, but it's going to become, I think it is intrinsically connected to economics.
I don't think that the creation of art is contingent on an institution or the presence of an institution. I think that while art may inform us and give us, in retrospect, idea of what our life was like 20 years ago or 30 years ago, I don't think it's necessary that we have to have an institution to do it in. Although I think maybe those institutions are created afterwards. Because I also think that even if there was an institution, we'd still have art. Because it's just our natural interest to create stuff. Whether it's a painting or music or sound or anything. I don't think it's necessary that we have to have a building to do it in.
Like going to Central St Martin's, you have this huge brand name behind you. I at least initially, in the first couple of years of the education, kind of felt that I was more paying for the name than the education, but then as you go along you realise they are really giving you a bit of their legacy. But I think to an outsider a lot of the time it's like, well, she has Central St Martin's on the CV, that's kind of where it stops, but that's enough in a sense. Like Central St Martin's has a huge, well-spun reputation, and it's interesting to exist within that. And do you actually get to benefit from that reputation on all courses, which is just a fine art, or is it just a fashion? So I think that's what we want to tap into as well.
I like to think of myself as quite an ethical consumer, but if you're not going to play the game and get money where you can, then you can't open the doors. And it's just part of a big system.
I think this is organised by Recreative, which is also being funded by Louis Vuitton as well. And from what I understand, Louis Vuitton actually does, they do fund some very good projects.
The institution needs to decide what its own moral parameters are and how rigorous an ethical audit it will do on its potential partners. Also, that ethical audit should be reciprocated by the other side of the partnership on St Martin's or the University of the Arts London.
To treat Central St Martin's as an autonomous institution is to forget that it's publicly funded.
If you're going to spend your money, you need to exercise care about where you spend your money and whose pocket it's going into.
No, of course, but it doesn't matter just section off a large amount, and you're not choosing education anymore to be educated. You're choosing it for greater reasons that aren't at the core of what you would do it.
Seen recently kind of a 14-year-old critiquing David Shrigley's show and then having that published within The Guardian, or having 10-year-olds being able to curate their own exhibitions, like with other galleries or smaller exhibitions, that actually, having studied curation for 3 years, was that still relevant today? Like, was that needed, and is it needed within the arts? Can anyone be a curator? Can anyone take part in art education? Having spent 3 years doing CCC, and this show is something of 3 of us with Claudia of Sunny Howard, who actually doesn't exist. Then how do people feel about that as an 11-year-old in this institution where we've been able to do this for the last 6 months and lie and lie and lie again, and I feel like I have to do this, and I'm like, hands up. Claudia doesn't exist. I've never lied so much in my life. Like, okay, I'm done.
Now I like the show. Before I was like, who's this really annoying, rich little spoiled girl?